You are listening to the Beyond the High Road podcast with Shelby Milford, episode number 148. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Beyond the High Road, a podcast dedicated to healing your heart and life following the grief of alienation. I'm your host, Shelby Milford, a twice certified life coach specializing in post-traumatic growth. If you're experiencing the effects of alienation and you're ready to heal, then this show is my love letter to you. Stay tuned.
You guys, I just finished planning out titling, which is not the hardest, but sometimes can be the most frustrating experience. But titling and running them through the headline AI tool thingy, the next 6 weeks of podcast episodes. In fact, longer than that, because I'm going to add in a best of at some point in there, since we're coming up on 150. Last time I did that was at episode 100, 101. I usually just week by week will pick a topic depending on what I feel like. I don't know, I kind of switch it up, but I just got all of it planned out for the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks. So that's exciting for me anyway. And thanks to a couple of you out there who have given me suggestions on episodes, upcoming episodes. So I'll be working on those too. You guys already know that because I've responded to your emails. Okay. So today we are going to be talking about 6 brutal truths that I wish I would have been brave enough to confront or open to acknowledging, accepting into my life back when the alienation began. And took me years to figure out or have the courage to confront. And it cost me a lot. And so, that's what we're going to talk about. I don't want you to have to go through, depending on where you are in your journey. Maybe some of you that are listening have been going through it even longer than I have been. So in that case, I'm sorry. Maybe you figured some of these out for yourself. My aim is to help those of you who maybe it's just the beginning for you. And what I mean by that is like you've just found out that this is what's been going on. You feel like you're scrambling, trying to, get to court or get eye to eye with your kid. Maybe you just found out that there's a term for what you've been dealing with from the whole time. It's just seemed, maybe it's been years that you just felt like you were living in the Twilight Zone. That's how I used to describe it. Or like in a Lifetime original movie. But then when I found out that there was a term for what I was experiencing and that there was so many other alienated parents out there, it was a moment. It was surreal. It was like, oh, thank God that it's not just me. I remember I was in my counselor's office whenever we really defined it. And she was like, yeah, it's so common that they've actually developed a term for it. And it was a relief. But at the same time, of course, the prognosis didn't seem great, because in my mind back then, I wanted my kid back home rightly where she belonged, I don't necessarily think that I'm just going to be upfront. And that's probably why so many alienated parents go so long without recognizing or coming to terms with these truths. But I don't necessarily think I would have found these truths to be good news or to be magical in any way. But I do now look back and wish that I would have seen it that way, because coming to terms with what I'm being ready to talk with you about would have saved me so much suffering and so much time and effort and money and all the things. We've talked about probably all of these, but I wanted to get them all together in one little episode so that whoever is looking for it and wanting to know how they can move forward in life. Like, these are the secrets. If you can accept these hard truths and start redirecting your path, you will be fine. You will find happiness and you will be able to create joy in your life, and you will not feel so flip-flop, up, down roller coaster like you might be feeling right now in this uncertainty of what's going to happen next. I think it's an essential episode for the parent who is really wanting to make a difference in the way that they're seeing our world. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Number one is that most parents spend years, like I was just talking about, if not lifetimes, focusing on the wrong problem. Something I learned from my mentor years ago is that in order to solve a problem, you must first clearly define it, which was no problem for me back in the day. I mean, my mentor now, coach back then, asked me, what is the deal? What's the current problem? First time I ever coached with her. And I was so overwhelmed because there were so many problems like on the forefront of my mind. I didn't even know where to begin. In fact, I remember that the coaching call with her, it almost sent me into a tailspin, even trying to articulate it, because there were so many incidents that I could bring up for us to visit in that conversation. There was no problem for me to define. My ex is acting as a barrier in between me and my kiddo. He has stopped at nothing to remove me from her life, jailing me, with false accusations and all the things. But she went on to say, my coach went on to say, and that you must define it, the problem, in a way that puts you in control of the situation. So my problem couldn't be then my ex is alienating my kid. And it makes sense, because if your ex is alienating your kid from you, nobody knows where to go from there. You can't know where to go from there. To say they're abusing my child or my child won't speak to me, it's a problem that you'll never solve, because one, it's not clearly defined. It's just a statement. And two, it's not solvable by you. When we're talking about other people's behavior, other people's dislike of us or their feelings, about us, there's nothing that we can do about those. But every alienated parent that I know, and I mean every alienated parent that I know, is either spending or has spent their time engulfed in the problem of alienating parent standing in the way of them and their kid. Every alienated parent I know has at some point spent their time thinking about how their children aren't speaking to them, or they're not their children anymore. They don't behave like the loving child that the alienated parents raised, which spending energy on fighting the other parent's actions or waiting for others like your ex, courts, even your children to change keeps the alienated parent, you, locked in a cycle of victimhood. Many of us think if only the other parent would stop, everything would get better. If only my kid would talk to me, I would be fine. I was happy before, but now I'm not, because my kid won't talk to me and they don't approve of me. And so until they do, until things start to get better, my life is in a holding pattern, or it's miserable, or I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. This perspective, which is 100% understandable. I was so hyper-focused on all the ways that they would try to cut me off. I would sign up to chaperone a field trip for school, to the zoo or to wherever. I would sign up to be one of the moms that's there chaperoning the kids. And inevitably, they would pull my daughter out of school so that she would miss the field trip. And I would be the chaperone that didn't have a kid there at school, and put me in that position of having to try to explain where my daughter was, even though I was here chaperoning, and at the same time not knowing where my daughter was. So it was just a miserable existence. So I felt like there was no way out of constantly focusing on the actions of the alienated parent, right? It felt like I was trapped there, which produced nothing for me. It just kept me in this constant resentment cycle. Like, here we go again. Here's another email from them. Here we go again. It's just going to be berating, right? And even though back in those days, I would do my darndest to not let it get to me, of course it always did, because I was always focused on their tone and their insults to me and how this was probably ruining my daughter and all the things, which I know each and every one of you can relate to, But the perspective as a whole, although understandable, is also super damaging, because it places the source of pain and possibly the source of healing, all hope, quote unquote, hope of healing, outside of your control. We cannot control their actions, but when we're in it, it's a whole nother thing. In the back of our mind, somewhere in our subconscious, we think that when they stop doing it, or when they turn 18, or when they get out from under their roof, right, then they'll have less pull, and that will be the answer. But there's always a holding out for when somebody else behaves differently than what they are right now, right? Which, again, just takes the possibility of your healing out of your control. So instead, the problem needs to be defined as you need to define the problem as, I mean, if you want to find answers that are acceptable to you, that feel better and put you in a place of control, of empowerment. Defining it as, how can I build stability? How can I build meaning, emotional well-being in my life, regardless of the other parent's behavior or courtroom outcomes or your kiddo's behavior, whoever? How can I build stability? How can I create meaning? How can I create purpose, cultivate all of the goodness based on what I know that I have control of, what I know that I can solve for, right? Because if your problem is always in the blame, there was this kind of related to this. I just read a Reddit post this morning that was talking about, do adult children ever take the blame? Do they ever finally own their wrongs, basically? Of course, I'm paraphrasing. I think that focusing on that, the same as what I'm talking about here, is going to produce a result that you don't want. My mom does this all the time with my daughter, right? She's like, well, she needs to take accountability. At some point, she's now an adult. Like the day that she turned 18 for real, she was like, well, now she's 18. She needs to start taking accountability. This is now her thing. And she needs to switch over and start behaving in a kind way and being respectful. And if I send a gift, then she should write me back and say thank you and yada, yada. Every time I'll be inside, I want to explain it to her again, but I know that my mom has her own running belief, and it's not going to change her. But for y'all, focusing on who's to blame is going to create more distance between y'all. It's an attitude of righteousness, which is actually one of the upcoming episodes that I have. So I'm not going to get too far into this. But if we're focusing on policing the universe, then there's always going to be somebody that's right and there's going to be somebody that's wrong. And most of the time, because we're human beings, the person that's right is going to be you or I or whoever, right? But that sets you voluntarily are setting yourself apart from whoever else that you're comparing yourself to, whoever's wrong in your eyes. So it's going to cause you to feel more alienated and more alone. Just expect them to not take ownership or the blame, quote unquote blame. I think blame is just focusing on who's to blame. It's not a useful task for you, in the long run, because it aims to separate. It's not coming from love. Instead, it's coming from this desire to find closure, which, by the way, does not exist at the end of that. Like the conclusion to who's to blame, like let's say your kiddo took ownership. They were like, yes, it was me. I did take part ownership and I definitely am to blame for this. Maybe it'll give you instant gratification, sort of, good, thank God, at least I know that they know, But then what? It doesn't actually reunite you guys or reconnect, get you guys closer. Instead, if that's what you're looking for, if you're just looking for them to admit that they were wrong, it just puts you on a level of feeling more secure in your status and your performance, I guess, as a parent, right? And then puts them somewhere either below or evens them out. I don't know. It's just, it aims to separate, And so instead of focusing on who's to blame or what the problem, like the other people that are creating the problem, instead you always want to define the problem as always, and even if the problem is they're alienating my child from me, you want to now fine-tune that problem and say why it's a problem for you, right? I know you guys have heard me talk about this before, and work on that part. I'm being vague right now because it's difficult I would have to throw out a bunch of examples, and I want to get through all of these today. So you can always set an appointment with me, and if you're stumped on this and you can't really see the forest for the trees, and every time you come up with the problem that's really irking you, it always seems to have to do with them, come schedule a consult with me, and I can help you clearly define your problem so that you are in control of the outcome. All right, so that's hard truth number one. You're focusing in the wrong place. People will grow old and resentful and callous and angry and bitter and sort of conspiracy theory like vigilante by focusing only on the problem outside of them. This is why you see people that are like hypervigilant, right? They're a bit paranoid and angry at the world when they think that lots of people are out to get them. So you've ever gotten in a conversation with somebody that wants to police, like the Karens online that always want to assign blame to somebody outside of them because then they can get on our high horse. That is a really unfulfilling purpose. And if that becomes a way of life for them, it becomes increasingly harder for them to get out of that. And then they will always be searching for something outside of them to create the peace that they're really craving inside and the sense of self-worth and identity that they're really creating on the inside. So there's that. Truth number 2 is nobody is coming to save you. Not from your pain, not from the predicament that you're in. The courts aren't going to protect you or save you. The therapists aren't, not even your children are. The guardian ad litem's, nobody is coming to save you, even your attorneys. And I mean this when I say this with so much love in my heart, because I want to teach you, if you haven't already learned this on your own, to provide for yourself no matter what. And if anything extra comes and extra help arrives, then that's a bonus. That way you're not spending your time spinning your wheels or sitting in a Hulk cycle, waiting for other people to come and do something that you are probably, not even probably, or certainly able to do for yourself. Being dependent on something external, it will always act as a barrier to your healing, and it only adds to your feelings of powerlessness and aloneness, like it's you against the world. Any dependence whatsoever, even if you think, especially if you think that you need it. And I mean that monetary, I mean that manpower, I mean all of it. If this is the challenge that you are faced with, I'm not saying that you don't need help. We all do need help, but please do not grow reliant on that help as your source for all the things. It turns into learned helplessness. The shift instead is healing happens from the inside out by developing the tools for emotional regulation, resilience, and personal meaning. Okay? So you always, once you've defined your problem in a way that it is solvable by you, then you be the one to follow it up. You be the one to actually solve it. And yes, you may recruit other people like lawyers and what have you. Just know in the end that it's you. They did all the awful acts and are continuing to do all the awful acts to alienate you from your children. And it sucks because they have effectively been able to, quote unquote, ruin part of our life. If you asked me back in the day, I would have said my entire life. Yes, but it is up to you to fix it, unfortunately. If you're thinking about, nobody's coming to save you, I thought that the judge would see. That was a big obsession of mine. I can't believe that this judge couldn't see through all of these lies. Another judge, Judge Arth, I will never forget him. He called it out and saw what they were doing, recommended them in court, but then turned around and had a vendetta against me. And the second hearing switched his ruling entirely because I pissed him off. One of my choices pissed him off. So he fully went back on his word and what he was seeing. And that made me so mad because I needed him to save me. I needed him to see. That's when I hit my depression, is because I was really dependent on this guy to change the trajectory of the situation of alienation in my life. And he didn't. I mean, it's a 50-50 chance. And really, depending on what we're talking about, sometimes the odds are way less in your favor. It's like playing roulette, because you're constantly looking for somebody else to show up and do their job or advocate for you in the right way or say the right thing. And also too, like if you're focused on how they're supposed to help you, then you can never really come up with your own ideas of how you can help yourself, how you can save yourself, which is always going to be the lesson, folks. Always. If you are in the situation of alienation, then I promise you, again, not saying that help is not needed for all of us. We all need a helping hand and support and what have you. That's what we're made for, right? But in the end, you have to be the one that helps and saves yourself. And I know that you guys know that. You have to be. Or else it'll be a recurring theme for you. Okay. Hard truth number 3. Relentless efforts on seeking justice through the legal system or the social systems will allow or prioritize anger, resentment, and grief to dominate your life. So the pursuit of validation from other people socially or winning in court, causing you to feel validated as well, can consume years, decades, and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I know I speak from experience, right? With very little payoff or no payoff, or maybe even negative payoff, right? In terms of connection or well-being. And I tell you what, I was on a consistent, I guess, quest to finally feel validated from the courts, for them to be punished to the point where their efforts quit, right? Because at some point, once the alienating parent, I think I still believe, but I definitely believed back then, that the only way that they would stop because my ex was above the law is for them to be reprimanded to the point where it hurt for them. And then things would cool off. And actually that did happen. The first ever court hearing that we had when I was ordered primary, the right to determine domicile and all the things, he stopped. In fact, he shied away from any sort of confrontation for a while there. And then when he found his end, because I've made some mistakes, that's when it all started ramping up again. But my belief that I took with me is that I need the courts, I need a judge to teach him a lesson. He obviously can't be coming from me. And so I was in this constant pursuit of getting a judge to see so that his hands would be slapped so hard that this would all quit. But like I said, it's a game of roulette. And it often doesn't cause you to feel at peace, or it doesn't give you the validation you desire anyway. You'll notice that it's like never enough. Also socially, like with approval. I see many people doing this with their kids, needing their or desperately wanting, craving approval from their children. But it will never, ever, ever be enough, because even the approval isn't coming in the right way or often enough. Like you might get approval 1 second, and I see this happen. I can't tell you how often. In fact, it's going on with one of my clients right now, where the kids will respond to a text, or they'll give them a hug or say that they love them. And then it's fine and it feels great in the moment. But then as soon as you get that and that high is sort of worn off, then you're looking for the next time that they give you approval. And then it's the next time and the next time. It's constantly looking outside of yourself for something that really you need to be producing on the inside of yourself. So once you approve of you, once you can validate you, then the other stuff is sort of like icing on the cake. Sure, it feels good. Everybody loves to have approval, right? Because it goes back to our primal need to be included, right? To be in the tribe, to be valued and seen and felt like that you're contributing to your community and all the things. But that stuff is extra. And it's actually when somebody approves of you, your kids, your spouse, your ex, whoever out, your boss, people out in society, your parents, your mom, when somebody's approving of you, it's never actually really about you. Ever. It's not your approval. It's their approval of you. So it's in their possession. Right? It's because of their thoughts, their feelings, the story that they have going on in their head. It's their approval of you. Does that make sense? I know I keep saying it over and over, but so often we think if I have their approval, then I will feel better. I'll feel at peace and I can go and concentrate on other things, right? Or if I have their approval, I can feel better about who I am and yada, yada, yada. We never really say it out like that, but that's the idea, right? But once you have their approval, like I said, you're going to be looking for the next time, because it's never going to feel like enough. It's always, you're like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, I just need more and more and more. It's like feeding a beast. And their approval of you is fleeting. It's fleeting. You don't know when they're going to approve and when they're not going to approve, especially if they're moody or alienated or what have you, right? Their approval is about their thinking and the place they're in, emotionally, mentally, maybe even physically, right? So you never really will know if it's authentic, genuine for them, because you're not in their reign. The wind could change and that approval could go right with it, just depending on what's going on for them. So redirecting your energy to what you can actually influence, your mindset, your habits, your self-care. That's what creates the sustainable path for you to recovery and to stepping off that roller coaster of ups and downs based on something external, right? Which is freaking horrible existence. It's super dramatic, which I'm actually going to get to that point in just a second. Hard truth number 4 is that when a parent's sense of self, when your sense of self becomes wrapped up in being the alienated parent, then your suffering will prolong. When your identity, and you may not know, or you may not identify that this is what your perceived identity is based in. Hopefully, I know it sounds redundant and wordy, but you get what I'm saying. But take a look at it, right? Take a look at if you are wrapping your identity up in being the alienated parent or being the victim, even. Again, nobody ever really wants to admit that to themselves, and of course not to the world, that I have a victim mentality or that I'm identifying as a victim, right? Nobody wants to admit that or face that, right? But if you are willing to face it, then you are that much closer to overcoming it. Okay? So it is parental alien, this whole situation that all of us are going through for however long you have, it's tragic. It's a tragic experience, but doesn't need to be your identity, nor does it need to be a life sentence. Okay? It doesn't need to define your life moving forward. That would be a miserable existence, and exactly why so many of us describe their existence as being like in a personal hell. Me at the bottom of a pit with no exit doors. The bottom of a well, people say. With no light, no stairs, no rocks to help them climb out. The way that you change that is to stop identifying yourself as an alienated parent, like using that as the excuse to why you can't do certain things, right? Go hang out with friends or meet new friends, or maybe it's why you won't go out on dates, or why you keep to yourself at work, or how high you place your goals, like the sights that you set for yourself. Sometimes because we're seeing ourselves as a victim and that alienation has held us back in all these other areas, then we can also use it to limit what our potential is, right? Like ever since alienation happened, it changed everything. And now I can't, because a lot of times financially, it'll start with whenever you guys got divorced, you're told, I have many clients that have gone through this, right? Not to make so much money now that you guys are separated because the divorce isn't final, so that the ex doesn't come and take whatever money that you are making, right? So you start setting your sights low and sitting them idle financially, and you don't go for the job offers, or you don't set the big goals for yourself because you're thinking that you need to blend in and not make any showy moves or create something big for you because of alienation, right? Because they'll take it. I'm not saying that that's not the case, but there's always a way to abide by whatever your attorney is suggesting for you, and also still not let it rule your life, so that you have a plan to get out of financial debt or do whatever. Don't let alienation be the thing that's holding you back. Do not. And if it's for a period of time, then just get with me, because there's a way for you to plan this so that you're not marginalizing your own self for the rest of your life. We get into this mindset of not trying hard because we were told to do that back when we were in the middle of separation, right? Don't make any crazy purchases. Don't change your income so that things stay secure and safe for you, right? But that can turn into a whole personality thing, and you don't even realize it's there. So don't let alienation be your excuse to hold you back from creating a beautiful life for yourself, because that really, again, is just perpetuating that hell that you might feel like you're in. Because of course, if alienation or being the alienated parent is the reason why you can't do all the things, you will always feel like your ex has a magic wand. You will always feel like the marionette and your ex is controlling you. So your identity is multifaceted. Always remember, restoring your purpose, many purposes, And self-worth means reconnecting with your passions, with your talents, and other meaningful roles outside of your parental relationship, outside of the way that you've identified yourself up until now. And I know that you guys have probably heard me say this. Just what I think is that so many of us, like, we go through life before alienation happens. And in my opinion, I think that alienation happens because most of us didn't nurture or develop our identities at all, for the most part. I'm not saying everybody, but when we became a parent, mom or dad, that's what defined us and gave us that sense of worth, right? We like lived for our kids. Like, even if you had your job and whatever else, being a parent is really what gave you that meaning and purpose in life, like most parents, right? But because maybe of our kid life, childhood, we may not feel like we've produced anything really of worth, when maybe you have, right? But you're not giving yourself enough credit. And because of that, alienation ensues, because they're going to go after the one thing that they know defines you. And then once that's taken away, then you have nothing, because you have not nurtured any other talents or interests that you maybe have that are buried. You know what I'm saying? So now it's time, if you're not seeing your kids at all or even as often, right now is your time to pour into you, even while still, of course, maintaining your efforts to connect with them. Still use this time. I think of it like, how when COVID happened, I really wanted to use that time. I was like, this is the perfect time, because everybody's at a standstill. I don't know, it made sense to me that now I had so much extra time to pour into me. And that's really when so much, the bulk of my healing began to, I began to see the rewards from all the efforts that I was putting out, was over the whole 1.5 COVID situation, But it's the same thing now with you. If you just recently had less time with your kid, turn all of that. There's a reason why you have that time. Use it to create something beautiful for you, instead of seeking outside of you for approval, for validation, for all the things, So right now is a time that you can be reinventing yourself and cultivating a sense of identity, a more rich, deeper, multifaceted sense of identity. Start producing value, even if that's volunteering for right now, doing something, providing value to others, so that you can build back up your sense of self-worth. Hard truth number 5, entertaining drama is a trap. Any of the drama, I don't care what kind of drama it is, it's a trap, and it's a time trap. Thinking about how evil and calculated they are, how sick and twisted they are, will only keep you sucked into the vortex of the negativity. That's the only notes I wrote for the hard truth number 5. You embellishing on, or not even embellishing, leaning into how terrible and awful and calculated and mean and twisted and sick and demented they are, is only going to cause you to feel those emotions. Feeling demented, sick, twisted, you bring your own self down with the experience that maybe they created, started. Also, too, I want to say that, when you, and I did an episode on this a while ago, when others want to commiserate with you and then you join in on that about your experience, they want to say to you, oh, I'm so sorry, they're just such terrible assholes. I can't believe they would do this to you and do this to your kids. This is just awful. One, they're just doing that to try to get close and contribute to your cause in a caring way, but they don't realize that by commiserating with you, it's in a word, commiserate, they're actually creating more negativity. It's not their fault. They think they're doing well, most of the time anyway, but it doesn't help. But when you go in on it too, then it's only going to send you down into a spiral and probably end up causing you to start beating yourself up, and go into a shame cycle. So don't get sucked into the drama, even when somebody else is wanting you to, Also drama about we want to entertain, when they do the emails and whatever, and we want to go on social media and read it out or talk about it. They're so this, they're so that, because we're looking for external validation from others about the situation, so that we can get social proof that the email that you're reading out loud is cruel, unkind, or whatever. We want to hear that from others. So we like, it's a adrenaline rush or like a dopamine hit. Once we get that validation from everybody else, then we could be like, yeah, see, I knew I was right. They're assholes. But give it a minute and see what you're left with after that. Then you will constantly be looking outward to try to get somebody else to agree with you so that you feel better again. And then you have to keep doing it over and over and over. It's a never ending cycle. Can't real, Entertaining the drama is always a time suck. Even like gossip. Maybe it's away from alienation. You getting in on or getting sucked into meaningless talk about other people, other things that are happening in the world, politics, when we have to look at the other side, demonize one side or the other, and think about how pernicious and terrible and bad and unscrupulous and all the things that the other side is. You're creating separation between you and the world. And so there is actually, I know that there's a really strong force behind an energy that comes with groups of people that form for the sole purpose to be against another group of people. There's a great deal of momentum and camaraderie that happens as a result of that. The dynamic is actually fascinating to me. Negativity in numbers becomes like a downhill rolling snowball, It never ends up well. And the people that are now formed together may actually form some real, true, like deep bonds together in the hating on the other people. But you still have the whole purpose of that is you against them. So once that fizzles out, then where do you guys go? Because that's what's really fueling your fire. And you can look at this too, like if you have gotten together with like a significant other who, and I'm distracting myself right now because I can think of this on the other side too, like how it's happening with me, with my ex and the stepmom, but if you were to get together with somebody who either has beef because they've had a past or a childhood even where some form of alienation or ousting has happened, they may have already had a vendetta and formed it with you. But then when y'all are just getting together or a sister or brother, you might do this with too, getting together to commiserate and talk negatively about your ex, whoever, notice how you feel on the inside. It's really icky. It may feel rewarding instantly, for a few moments, but in the end, there's an emptiness, a very dark emptiness. And so then you'll find that you're constantly having to re-up your supply, really, your energy supply, by getting together and talking negatively again. It's addictive. It's a reward-based mentality, right? But the reward, it's not lasting. So that's hard truth number 5. Drama is never your friend. Gossip, being against something, never your friend, ever. I can't think of a time where it's ever going to be fruitful or fulfilling for you. Okay, lastly, hard truth number 6. This hurts my heart to even say this, but it's true. There is no guarantee for any of our future reconciliation or restored relationship contact, okay? And hoping for it, I kind of touched on this last week, but just hoping for that as a condition for your own happiness postpones your healing and your ability to find and feel joy indefinitely. Do I need to repeat that? Maybe I need to repeat that. There's no guarantee for future reconciliation or any sort of restored contact or connection between you and your kid, right? Hoping for it as a condition for your happiness will postpone your happiness, your ability to create happiness, okay? Accepting this, what I wrote down here is accepting this harsh reality is not the same thing as giving up. Actually, instead, it's necessary for you to accept this, recognize this, in order for you to move forward authentically with a productive focus. So along the same lines as hard truth number 4, you creating a life that's fulfilling for you and rich feels rich for you, regardless of eventual outcomes and the hopeful whatever, is imperative in order for you to set yourself free from the jail that you may be feeling like you're living in. Okay? So I know that these truths are not like I said in the beginning, they're not lovely ones, but it would really, really help you, behoove you to, if you need to listen to this again and notice where any of these might be true for you. I'm not saying this to point fingers or anything. I really am saying this coming from so much love, because the quicker that you are able to see truth in your thinking right now, like in what I've said here, and relate it to your thinking and the way that you're seeing your world, the sooner that you will be able to move through all of this. I used to always shy away from speaking about assigning blame, like I was talking about earlier, especially when it came to my situation of alienation. I wanted to defend myself because it's just kind of the nature of the dynamic, right? We're being accused of doing stuff. And so we, of course, enter into survival mode, right? And feel the need to defend ourselves and no, that's not what I was doing. I feel misunderstood or not heard or cut out from even being able to explain yourself, right? But one of the most powerful lessons that I've learned is finding truth in whatever anybody says about you to you, right? About your character or whatever. Finding even a sliver of truth to what they're saying can help diffuse the situation. Not that we're worried about how they're going to respond, but can diffuse the situation for you and put your defenses down so that you can move on. And it actually, most of the time, by you accepting whatever somebody else is saying, like, oh yeah, there's probably truth to that. It so often it dumbfounds the other person. And I'm not saying that you always need to, right now I'm talking about in the context of staying open to any of these 6 items that might be true for you, But I mean, as a rule, I always, no matter if somebody says something to me, oh, you're acting defensive today, or you're being a bitch even, I find it so much more empowering and uplifting. Like I feel like I upgrade the whole situation by looking to find and leaning into any truth to me being a bitch, like, yeah, I can be a bitch sometimes. Oh, you're so nice. Yeah, I am so nice. You are irrational. I can find some truth in that too. I do this too, like when it comes to me judging other people, which we're human, we're all going to do it, right? But see how, like, if I'm judging somebody for being whatever, bitchy, then I like to also, after I finish judging them, because I don't want to stifle myself, I allow myself on the inside to judge, and sometimes I write it down. But then after I'm done judging the person for not behaving the way I want or whatever it is, I then put that on for myself. Like if they're being unfair, I try to find the ways that I'm being unfair or that I have been unfair in the past, right? And so that's kind of what I'm offering here for you throughout all of these truths. Like, instead of defending yourself, if you can lean into it and find even slivers of truth, you step out of a place of resistance and into flow, into openness, a place of understanding, compassion, and growth. Really, the opportunity for growth. Anytime you're resisting, you shut the opportunity for growth down. But the second that you lean into the possibility of something being true for you, even something that feels offensive. Now, I'm not saying take something on that's not yours, but if you can lean into the ways that maybe in a parallel universe that you are whatever somebody is saying, or you have been that way, then it takes the air out of the whole situation and you can move on. Because we've all been bad and good, right? If we want to label it bad and good, dark and light. All of us have that in us. And the sooner we are to recognize that and own it, the sooner we are to move through whatever lesson we're in into the other side. I know that you asked me that, but I just wanted to say that as a reminder, especially talking about these kind of painful truths. These are not warm, fuzzy, yummy truths, but if they're there and you're not recognizing them, how I didn't for so long, and how many alienated parents that I see that have carried with them the resistance to these truths, it just makes your life so much more difficult, And I really don't want that for you. I want you to cultivate a sense of peace and safety and continuity and certainty in your life today and moving forward. And the way that you can do it is by owning whatever parts of these truths that maybe you've been resisting for thus far, So anyway, that's all I have for you. I hope you guys have a lovely, lovely week, and I'll see you next week. Okay. Ciao.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you like what you're hearing and you'd like to hear more, please make sure to click subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. Also, for bite-sized clips and tips, be sure to find me on TikTok or Instagram. See you next week.